The second part that we're going to look at now is the concept of food security. And in the past weeks, we've looked at the loss of arable land through land degradation, soil loss, desertification. In week one, we talked about aquifers that either are fossil and there's no replenishment of that water. So once it's been withdrawn, it's gone. And then the fact that we are over using our aquifers so that we are the earth is not able to recharge them at a sustainable rate versus what we're actually pulling out of the ground right now. And then we looked today at the melting glaciers and how if there is a lack of glacial ice and snow melt in the spring, that it will then go into the agricultural valleys, and there will be less water to provide for that agricultural growing season. So these together, plus the fact that we've lost some biodiversity. We talked in week one about the fact that one single healthy tuna went for $396,000. The overfishing that we're doing and at an unsustainable rate is depleting that type of food supply also. So it's not just crops, it's fish, and the amount of cattle that we have in certain places that are turning into deserts, they're dying off. So there are a lot of pieces that can come together to work at the fact that we have a real issue with dealing with food security in the future. The World Bank estimates that by 2050 that we are going to have 9 billion people on the planet, and that is going to require 50% more food than we are currently producing. Right now, we can have volatile markets. In Russia during the heat wave, it killed 60% of the crops, and Russia stopped exporting wheat, and it affected the entire world's price of wheat. And they didn't let it export so they could keep what was grown in their own country. One of the things that we haven't talked about is the fact that there are going to be 9 billion people, and we look at not only the stress that they put on the land, but why is it that we can have entire cultures that are dependent on basically sustainable agriculture. When we look at in some countries in Africa, the women there, the families there may have 4 or 5 children. And one of the reasons that they do that is because in many of these countries there's a 10 to 16% infant mortality rate. So they have larger families because they know the likelihood is that some of their children are going to die before the age of 5. These factors all go into the cycle of why everything is so interconnected. It's not like there's one answer that we can have and say, oh, this is going to fix food security, or oh, this is going to fix aquifer withdrawal. There's so many moving pieces to this, and on top of it all, we have climate change that's happening now. So we can't only project what we think that the climate is going to be like by the time of 2050. So these food security is a very large issue, and we're going to look at it more in the coming weeks because we're going to find that it has enormous political ramifications. We're going to call them failing states, where the countries no longer really have control over what happens in their country. Now, the last thing that I want to cover right now is what's called a land grab. And in many third world or second world countries, land is being bought up by companies and other governments. So Saudi Arabia is a large player in this because they don't have a lot of, because they have to import most of their grain and they don't want to be, they're now buying land in other countries so that they can have an area where they'll be able to grow crops for themselves. There are companies that are doing the same thing. Sugar companies are going in and they're buying up land in other countries so that they can grow their crop. And we looked last week in Burkina Faso what happened with one of the companies that came in, and it wasn't legally there. The farmers didn't have any say in whether or not they got their land. So these land grabs are a really big factor in the continuing cycle of poverty. And I come back to the fact that, what responsibility do companies have in this world of instant information, in radical transparency? As these issues come to the forefront, companies are going to have to deal, excuse me, with these issues. They're going to have to face the public, and sometimes the public puts too much pressure on them. A company may not be able to achieve 50% water reduction in the next 5 years because it's just not technologically possible. So these are the issues that we're looking at. We're going to go into some of the sustainability, embedded sustainability prototypes for strategies for companies to be based on in the second lecture of this week. So I hope this helps. And again, if you have any questions, send me an email. Thanks.